The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, the Daniel from PubKey,
Happy Friday, plebs.
Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor,
Good Friday, folks. Yeah.
Trey Walsh from Progressive Bitcoin Podcast,
Hello, hello.
Josh Agala from the Standard.io,
Evening, Gov.
Ben Ark from LN Bits,
My hello.
and I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one. Lord, you told me to do this. Pastor defends taking $1.3 million from failed crypto. Eli Regaldo said that God told him to start the INDX coin project, and he's waiting on further guidance after the Colorado securities officials accused him of running a crypto scam. Yes, it's finally gotten to that point. We're now covering Godcoins. Will this be a one-off, or will there be more coins inspired by our Lord and many others? The Daniel, what do you think about the new Godcoins?
My coin is made by the Lord Satoshi. May he rest in peace wherever he is. This is a weird story, right? Because I mean, it's hard enough to get Bitcoin adopted. Like, how does a religious person, a pastor, get a flock of his congregants together to all invest at the same time in a token like this? Like, I don't know. There's something about when the merger of religion and cryptocurrency that's very strange. Suddenly, people just blindly ape in. This reminds me a little bit of like the Ruja Ignatova story, but like a low rent version of that. They had this cult, and we saw that happen a few years ago with BitConnect, and there's always going to be one, but I think this is just the sign of things to come. I'm sure it'll be much bigger ones, a much larger God rug pull in the near future.
It is really impressive he was able to pull this off. As they said, he was in marketing previously, and then he used that power to market the index coin. Dan Eve, what about a God coin for you?
I like how in the article they used the creation of Adam picture, but had to state that it wasn't actually an image of the pastor. Just for anyone that didn't know, that just to avoid any confusion, this isn't the pastor right here. But yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How there's often I don't know, an air of self-importance to these things, right? Like that God told him specifically that he needed to raise all this money via this coin and not someone else. There's always something that's a bit weird about that. And even now he's saying, I don't know how God's going to turn this around. Like, he obviously believes the fact that God like told him to do this this shitcoin money raise, but even thinking, he's got me in this mess, like, oh goodness God, you've done it again. Like, it's just a funny little sideshow sort of thing. I don't know, it's crazy. And God's not done with index coin or whatever it is. Yeah, it's sad. There's been, from the dawn of time, religious kind of themed frauds, that happen all the time, right? There's plenty of it about. It was a matter of time until an actual pastor did it to a shitcoin, and again created another bad name for Bitcoin, because no doubt that's going to have some form of link, right? That Bitcoin's the bad thing here, not this crazy pastor who's trying to steal a load of money from people. But let's just hope God provides a miracle for him.
And the bad thing definitely wasn't the religion that helped all these people invest. Trey Walsh, what do you think about God coins and the pastor's $1.3 million, a couple 100,000 of which was used to improve their home? God also told them to do that.
I mean, I think this makes complete sense. I think it's a very Joel Osteen type story of the mega pastor in Texas, Bitcoiner's favorite state. I think it fits right in. I mean, I've said this on my show before. My background was in like evangelical Christianity, growing up in that. So I've seen charismatic pastors. I've seen young pastors look just like that. Crypto wasn't around when I was a kid doing that, but if it had been around, I guarantee I probably would have been at a congregation where that was being preached and said. So it's not surprising at all. I think we'll see many more of these things, it's a powerful drug. And I think these type of people, they get in positions of power very easily. There's not really many checks and balances, and you've got the God card. So I think we can expect to see this and quite a bit more.
I do think you're right. This guy was incredibly small time. If he'd had a large political network, say hundreds of thousands of donors he could have emailed this to, I think he could have gotten 10, 20 million easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Josh Shigala, what do you think about Godcoins, the new trend in altcoining?
Yeah, the like the other panelists have said, there's always been an air of scams that is possible through religious fervor. The merchandise scam obviously is a big one, where you sell oils or cloths or anything that gives them luck, and the sheep will come. I mean, they're even called sheep in some of these congregations. So yeah, it's unfortunate that people can use. In a way, it's kind of it's similar to a Craig Wright affinity scam. Your affinity is with God, and God is in your ear. So so you must be right because God told me so. It's amazing that people actually fall for this sort of stuff, but yeah, unfortunately they do, and they'll keep on doing it. Pyramid schemes, investment scams in general have always taken place. I mean, a lot of the time, religious gatherings are. I know people that have become religious purely because of the business connections, because you can come together and you start to make friends, and make business connections in that way, and yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. You can see these pyramid schemes happen like that too, where people feel confident enough. He wouldn't scam me as a highly religious good man, and of course, yeah, they do. So yeah, be careful out there. If it's too good to be sounding true, then it probably is. That's not to say that someone can't talk about some sort of project and it always is a scam, as well. So this is the thing. You can't just wholeheartedly call everything a scam, because sometimes something might not be. You never know. But yeah, so it's hard on a show like this to determine, to tell you a rule set. But generally, if it's too good to be true, then it's a scam, basically.
Well, and obviously we don't want to get too much into religion here, although it is a great topic. But remember when they all went on the Crusades, they also brought back trinkets, pieces of the true cross, a thumb of a pope, stuff like that. And I thought Josh was going to say about the carnivals and the faith healing and the way that people used to go town to town, kind of preying on this ignorance and placing the hands among people. And, it's pretty easy to get someone from backstage to pretend to be crippled and then to put your hands upon them and to cure them. That was the wrong word. But so on and so forth. We've had these problems with religion. So I think it's something where you have to take the good and the bad. And this is obviously $1.3 million of bad. Ben Ark, what do you think about the God coins? Are we going to see more of these? Is Vitalik going to declare his deification soon?
It's like you say, like religion has been used to scam people out of money just since time immemorial. Particularly if you have like a preacher or a pastor who's in a position of power. So with the Lutheran Bible, it was a shock to all the regular townsfolk when they could actually read the Bible, that there wasn't all these crazy taxes, which the local priests would have said there was a tax for. You have to pay me a tax for this, tax for that. It's in the Bible. And then when they could finally read the Bible, they're like, oh, it's not actually in the Bible. You're just scamming me. The scammers target the vulnerable, and that sort of incensory prayer, which some evangelical Christians can lean towards, where they want God to intervene. They're vulnerable, and they've usually got a reason for wanting some sort of help, and that's why a lot of these evangelical pastors, the Copeland types of this world, they'll say things like, send me money and then I'll pray for you to be wealthy, and then all these people will send them money because they're vulnerable and they want a helping hand. So it's just a scammer targeting vulnerable people through the lens of religion, which has happened for forever. And yeah, it will continue to happen. And I'm sure he's probably the first of many pastors who are going to jump on the crypto train. But it's the idea as well of like living by faith and just saying it's God's choice and what God wants to do and whatever, God will save me from this problem. It always feels like contradictory to me because it's like vanity, that God really cares about you and is going to bail you out, which seems like a contradiction in the Christian context, but there we are. But yeah, so yeah, it will continue to happen. Sad, poor people.
Yeah,
My personal Jesus.
It's a good point there about that happening to them personally, right? It's like so God approached this guy and was like, "You need to, raise this this shitcoin token and make money from it." Like, surely, is a good pastor be going, "This sounds like great, God, but what about if we save some babies dying in Africa first? We did the token."
Yeah, it's like God can't be bothered with the kids with bone cancer. He's going to bail you out of your crypto scam. So fair enough.
That's actually a really good point. Like, was there some sort of utility being advertised for this coin? Like, what was its actual purpose? Was it, if you give money to the pastor and buy his tokens to like, kids in Africa who are going
No,
hungry get food?
he just said you'll get rich, which
You
is
get rich, right?
which is a usual line from the pastors, from those pastors, where the people will literally send them money, and they will say, if you send me money, you'll get rich, you'll become wealthy because God will like it, and he'll reward you. God wants us to be rich. That's why I've got my private jet and fleet of cars and whatever else.
Ain't nobody taking any riches to heaven.
Well, the real problem here seems to be that he made this token. So he has this index coin, so people are investing in it, whereas the other religious people in the past have just accepted donations. By promising returns, he's crossed a line and become more of a stockbroker, less of a religious money collector. So it is interesting, but like we said, this is only the first of many. He only made 1.3 million. Exit question, the Daniel. How high will it go? What will the next God coin make?
Oh, those are rookie numbers, man. We have to get at least 10 million.
Dan Eve, higher or lower than 10 million?
Yeah,
next God coin.
It's got to be in the tens, right? 10 to 50 or go home.
Trey Walsh, higher. We've heard 10. We've heard 10 to 50.
I mean, we've seen what I would argue some scam coins hit 1 billion. So yeah, well, let's say 500 million. I'll say 500 million.
500 million, a new
I mean,
leader.
1 billion with inflation at some point. I mean, come on, 10 years.
Josh Shigala, can you go higher? Remember, we're talking about religion. This is a very, very valuable coin. It has Jesus's face right on the coin.
Well, I'm going to go that instead of value, we have 2 God coins where these factions break off and war for 100 years, saying that their coin is the true God coin and your coin is but a scam, and the other team says the same, and they battle it out, murdering each other's families for decades.
Well, that's just what they said in the Hitchhiker's Guide. They said, you philosophers can make millions of dollars debating this for centuries, almost like a controlled opposition. Ben Ark, higher or lower? We've up to 500 million. Quite a lot of money. You could also be an Islamic God coin. We have no idea what the next God coin will be.
It'd be good if like one of these, that one coin chick, like if one of them just becomes an out and out messiah, and just claims they're a messiah for something, then 600 billion, of course.
600 billion, higher. It's going to be a big market for God coins. Everyone is excited. Wired Magazine doesn't want me to read any more articles there, but they've written one, issue 2, a dangerous new home for online extremism. Yes, DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations, have been discovered by Wired Magazine, and Wired Magazine is afraid, very afraid. As they say in the article, although a new technology can be used for good, we'd rather focus on its negative aspects. Dan Eve, will DAOs be used for terrorism?
Well, it does seem like another one of these kind of, scaremongering kind of articles, right? Picking what the worst thing that a DAO could possibly be used for. And dare I say it, it has a few dog whistles, as it were, from depending on which side of I'm using this the antonym kind of version of this, but it's saying it mentions alt-right neo-Nazis and supremacy and things, and says it, although it kind of says in the article it says cyber caliphate, it kind of mentions a non-right-wing type of usage of a DAO. It's more of a token sort of message, mention of it. But you can't really take this seriously, these articles, because when they declared Pepe a hate symbol, right? It's a hate symbol used by the alt-right because of this, that, and the other. And this kind of basically article sounds like very much like that kind of point of view, right? Kind of a nuance like, oh, a green frog was used once in a bad meme, and therefore everyone who uses the green frog that's just a funny stoner guy must be some sort of Nazi who wants to corrupt the planet. So it seems like a bit of a weird article, to be honest, a bit of a scaremongering article. But they're all the same thing, right? They hear about a new bit of technology and they suddenly get all worried about how it can be used in some crazy ass way that probably is not going to be used for, and then get fixated on that for ages. Like we hear about Bitcoin, we're still here now with Jamie Dimon the other day saying Bitcoin's used for money laundering and all sorts. He's just extremely jealous because Bitcoin is being used instead of the dollar for his money laundering abilities. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a bit of a weird article, really, from kind of scaremongering about crazy alt-right Nazi people just using a DAO probably for rather unnefarious purposes for most of them, like a coffee one.
It also seemed like it was a really late article. We've heard about DAOs for years now. They should have been scaremongering earlier on. Now, for them to scaremonger, there's already been all this time. They could have built whatever scary DAO that they're afraid of.
Yeah, exactly. There's no actual real. DAOs have been around for years. There's no actual substance to the article. It's just all waffle. There's no example of here is how a DAO was used really nefariously, and the police were involved, and this was really bad. It's just like, oh, Nazis could use this for so and so. Any evidence of it? No, I'm just being hypothetical here from my stool of knowledge about DAOs.
Stool of Knowledge is my new band name.
It's the bar stool of knowledge.
It's also great that the article comes after all those articles saying how the terrorist groups don't want Bitcoin donations. They're too traceable. It keeps exposing their people, and they don't want that. Trey Walsh, what do you think about the danger of DAOs exposed by Wired magazine?
Oh, I think they're running out of things to cover, like stories. I think they're just making the rounds, and someone spitballs. Just see them spitting in a room, and exactly what you said, Dan. It's kind of like, okay, this could hypothetically happen. This bad thing could hypothetically happen, and that's been most of the attacks on Bitcoin and anything else. Is this could hypothetically happen? I mean, freedom of the press. Oh my gosh, they can print something and spread this out. That's bad. No more printers. We can't. I mean, you can go back so far, and obviously we all know this, and I feel like I've been talking about this in circles forever and ever, especially facing the FUD from like Elizabeth Warren and the left and stuff that I focus on a lot for my platform. But it kind of makes me think. Ben Ark, Rabble, and I recorded an episode a while back about Noster a few months ago and social media, and it's kind of more of a question of how do we want to live? How do we want to coexist as people now that we have this technology in social networks? Because it's almost like what you're describing is like a social network. So, these people haven't really figured out in their heads what to make of it. And people need things to be either good or bad. It's really easy for people to look at things and say, that's good or that's bad. Okay. There's no gray areas. There's no some tech is neutral. It can be used for both. The concept of, money for enemies. We talk about this. So I think people are really trying to grapple with what does the future look like? This stuff is here. How can we try to be good people and exist amongst these things? But most of it, I think, is just an article, a company getting bored, wanting clicks. The backside of some people that actually believe this is thinking, how do we exist with technology? I think that's such a bigger question we're going to be figuring out for a very long time.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to deny the terrorist organizational trees or flow charts or any of this other business technology that exists in so many textbooks. If they want to have a Facebook or a social network, they're obviously going to be able to make one. And of course, Al-Qaeda means the base, aka the database. But that's a whole CIA story we don't want to get into. Josh Shigala, what do you think about DAOs and the danger exposed by Wired magazine.
Yeah, where do you start with something like this? The thing is that every technology can be used for good, can be used for bad. I mean, people that rob banks and murder people also wear shoes. And I'm going to write an article about how terrible shoes are because, people can murder people while wearing shoes. It's shocking. Um, Obviously, it's a total nonsense. But the interesting thing about these articles is that it's designed to basically find something that's really fascinating in this world. I find DAOs just as fascinating as when I found Bitcoin because it's really uh, for me, apart from, obviously you can also use it to scam people and all the bad stuff, but it's amazing that you can build a whole community with a legal framework, with also like with, a set of rules, a set of votes. It's kind of a democratization. It's kind of, for me, it's like a fusion uh, of having almost like a socialist uh, uh, mechanisms of what are they called? Ben, help me out here. When
Like
you have the shops,
redistribution of wealth.
A cooperative.
yeah, a cooperative. That's right, a cooperative, mixed with capitalist ideologies, where you can have a free market and go out there and figure out how to make your cooperative work. This is sort of fascinating because it's in a free mechanism. No one's forcing anybody to use it. Obviously, there could be coercion involved, but this is amazing, right? And Wired being a publication that's designed to highlight the virtues of technology, but also the downsides, have specifically chosen here to go after the downsides. And maybe that's typical of the time that we live in, where clickbait is the highest of goals to head towards as a publication, as more and more readers flee to, I don't know, TikTok or some other distraction. It's hard to get people in, and so yeah, it's just typical. It's just typical of the Bitcoin space, the crypto space in general. Is constant negativity, but yeah. Yeah, I just don't understand it because you can have extremists anywhere, like in any community. Why do you need it to be a DAO? You can have it in chat groups, you can have it in Roblox, you can have it in like anywhere, really. So yeah, it is what it is. But I think people are waking up to this sort of. I guess the really new people will be like, "Oh God, stay what? You're part of a DAO? Are you part of a DAO?" Hmm. Actually, the good sides is that I see a lot of people that work in many DAOs. They go, they do a bit of work here, and they do a bit of work there, and they build like a reputation amongst different DAOs to do, like, I don't know, whatever they do, graphics or marketing. It's amazing. I guess these articles are there to make you doubt them. Say, what's your political affiliation there?
I think the key there, Josh, is to replace the word DAO with gang. Are you in a gang? Are you in a DAO? I'm in a gang. I'm in a DAO. But yes, it is disappointing to see Wired magazine, which could be a futurist magazine, much like the great Omni magazine, dragged down to these depths. Like Josh said, I think a much more interesting topic would be, what could a DAO with the AI do if it bought Bitcoin and then used the Bitcoin to do dot dot dot? And that's a more, sci-fi jumping off point where we think about positive things in the future, maybe inspire some businesses out there instead of this, which scares the crap out of people and maybe even inspires some terrorists out there, which is not what we want.
Yeah.
Ben Ark, your
Yeah.
thoughts on Wired's scare piece?
Yeah, it's cool that the DAO thing, participants being able to freely associate and move between DAOs, because that is, pretty a socialist utopia. You take your tools of production between all these different cooperatives. And we want cooperatives to win in a free market, because they are superior when we get the right tooling. They're a superior production paradigm than the corporate feudalist structure which we're used to now. But powerful, like rich, big, powerful interests have always pushed their interest with lobbying groups or whatever. And this is just another tool which allows, normal plebs, proletariat, whatever you want to call them, to band together and then push whatever their interests might be. And I suppose that was the concern they were trying to raise. But what you're really doing is just empowering people to collaborate together. So they're it's not just one person, it's a collection of people who can push an interest. It was quite funny in the article because the examples they gave of all these DAOs were just so goofy and stupid. But then they were like pushing this like dystopian idea of what a DAO could be used for. It's a shame that they hadn't read up and read about things like assassination markets and all the dark shit which crypto anarchists used to talk about, because all this stuff's been covered years ago, and there were far darker ideas than some fucking neo-Nazis making a DAO. So it's just allowing normal people to band together and push their interests, and it's good that DAOs are getting traction. It's something we should only have in the Bitcoin world. I know the shitcoiners are busy on it at the moment, and hopefully we'll end up with some DAOs in Bitcoin, and we'll get to play around with that stuff at some point. But yeah, it's a funny article. Just wait until they finally read up on actual crypto anarchist literature and what they thought DAOs would be.
Well, and the main thing that a DAO enables you to do is to share money. All of these people, white supremacist terrorists, they already have online communications. They already have chat rooms and message boards and whatever. This DAO would enable them to better share and to distribute money. But Daniel, what's your DAO affiliation? Do you fly any DAO colors? Do you throw any DAO signs?
I have no DAO affiliation. I do remember the original DAO, which was a sizable rug pull that happened after Ethereum launched, and that's kind of like made me walk away from that whole world. And I never really looked back at it. And I keep seeing like every once in a while someone's like promoting this or that DAO, and it's usually for like something like gaming or like app design or some sort of like education community. Like there's all these different ideas that have come out of that world. Like, and again, like I don't see a benefit to using that versus just building your own community directly. Like we just built a community on Nostr. We build communities on Telegram. Like you can use other technologies besides these sort of blockchain token assets to distribute the value for value economy that exists on Nostr right now is just using Lightning. It's funny. I went to read that article and I couldn't get around the freaking paywall. And it would have been nice if there had been like a Lightning QR code I could have zapped, or maybe that's that's the good use for a DAO, right? Wired, like I used to subscribe to Wired back when they were a paper magazine, and like they actually had good reporting. And then over the years, it just got worse and worse, and they wrote a lot of kind of like hit pieces on Bitcoin, and it just got really boring to read that kind of stuff. So it feels like lazy journalism, and they're just recycling stuff from the last cycle because they know it's coming back and it's going to get attention. So to me, I don't see any value in this kind of article. It just seems like somebody was, had a fever dream about Nazis and white supremacy and decided to wrap it in this DAO idea, which is just, nonsense. They just clickbait. That's what it is.
It is so interesting, Daniel. As you said, you see the article and you see Wired, you see the masthead, and you're like, oh, I can trust this. This is the old magazine I used to read. But much like they found out with Sports Illustrated, having AI people writing articles and fake AI writers and so forth, these magazines are much like the brands of the 70s and 80s, like Polaroid and Atari, where they've just been sold and resold and sold and resold. And yeah, you can get a camera that says Atari on the side, but has nothing to do with the game console.
This may be their last gasp. They seem like they're grasping, and they, for attention and readers, and they're not what they used to be. It's not the same company, and I wouldn't read that stuff. So maybe they'll be going the way of Sports Illustrated soon.
Well, and I can unfortunately report from my Facebook ads that you can subscribe to Wired for a whole year for $5, which seems really cheap. But then also the quality of what you're getting goes down as well. Exit question, Dan, Eve, let's try to turn this around. Let's think of a positive use for a DAO. Could be an existing DAO that you like, or just something that you think about the future. What would be a cool DAO?
I like the idea because I used to have a flat in a block, and there was like a management company that ran it, and they charged a fortune and did a crap job. So I've always liked the use case of like people who own a like a flat in an apartment block running a DAO to actually, you know, to run the maintenance of that block and have full control over that and the money. I think kind of that's kind of nice community idea.
All right, community DAO. Trey Walsh, what's your idea for a DAO?
The progressive Bitcoiner. No, I'm just kidding. My mind isn't there. I'm so focused on Bitcoin and money stuff. The thing that kept popping out to me is, you remember the craze over, I say remember, it was like a year ago, over the metaverse. Like the metaverse was going to take over, and that in my mind is kind of this DAO collective concept. What was then, and then it completely died away. So I'm not saying, like, there are a lot of folks into virtual reality and augmentation and things like that, in terms of the metaverse. So I think the idea, I'd be really interested to hear more from Ben on this, maybe offline too, just in terms of like those type of things in Bitcoin and any smart contracts and things like that. I think are super interesting, for any variety of groups. We've got a lot of systems crumbling right now, whether it's governments, global financial systems. So this is definitely gonna rise. Let's hope the good guys jump into this as well. That's what I'd say.
I would like to see a metaverse DAO. I think that would be a more authentic way for the metaverse to develop. If you go back to Snow Crash, again, they're really just describing the internet here, where a bunch of servers come together. But no one thought Facebook would make a virtual world and then maybe gift it to humanity, and then we get the metaverse that people really want, where it's all chaotic and free and full of porn. Josh Segala, what would you like to see in a DAO?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, fundamentally DAOs are a giant multi-sig, that allow people to vote with their signature. So yeah, I'd like to see basically a major like something like an Uber or something, where all the drivers get to vote on something or other, you know, a change. Yeah, there's all sorts of things you can do. And I'm really looking forward to the future. It's just probably people like Gary Gensler will jump in and you know, piss all over any idea that comes out of the free market. Obviously, there's going to be things that people call scams because they're experiments actually, and some experiments fail. But this is the whole nature of freedom and freedom of use and freedom of ideas, is that you try wacky things and maybe some things work. Yeah.
I think there are a lot of traditional business structures that could be replaced by a DAO, especially like you said, Uber, TaskRabbit, any of these like .com gigging service companies where it's really just a central switchboard. In a lot of ways, it could be replaced, and that switchboard could just buy network resources or whatever you need for it. So that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ben Ark, what's your idea for a DAO? Maybe a metaverse DAO or a Noster DAO?
Well, I kind of feel that I liked the MakerDAO thing for a while. The idea of like there's a vault, and then you put stuff in, and then you get some shitcoin out, and then the participants, or the part of the federation who then controls the vote, could vote on what that money's spent on, or whatever, or or what it's used for. Well, the MakerDAO thing kept a peg, didn't it? So it kept like created like a stable coin or something. But there's certainly something in like federated multi-sig systems, and that's why all this traction is going on with Fedimint. And I think that's something I wouldn't mind seeing is like an eCash federated system, which kind of works like a DAO maybe. But you know me, I mean, I want you know, small countries to use this technology to free themselves from the hegemony of imperialist powers such as the US and the UK. You know, Wales, we want our own Welsh pound, and maybe that could be through a DAO, make a DAO type thing, a vault. If we put Bitcoin in and we get Welsh pounds out, and it's somehow using arbitrage and not arbitrage. What's it called? You use you buy and sell back to the vault in order to keep a peg. And I think MakerDAO were quite successful at this for a while as an experiment. Whether that could be done on a federated eCash system like Fedimint, I don't know, but it seems very promising to me. The tooling is there now for countries which don't have big financial institutions and infrastructure to be able to create their own currency, their own sovereign currency, and free themselves from, bigger currency players like the USD.
Now, see, that would have been a much better article. How DAOs can develop the Welsh pound, and like what that could mean for Welsh independence, Scottish independence, all kinds of other groups that want to have their own token or monetary value and share it with each other.
Because then as well, when you've
Radical.
got a federated multi-sig system like that, you can do things like fiscal stimulus, but it's a lot harder to pull that lever of you just turn on the money printer. You can only really do it like if there's a really good reason to do it and everyone votes on it, or there's some horrible economic crisis and everyone votes on it. So I think it's got a lot of power. There's certainly something in it.
Of course, now when you say the Welsh pound, I'm thinking of that viral image last week of the Irish National Vault full of Irish butter, gold butter. The Daniel, what's your idea for a DAO? I still haven't heard my idea yet, so I'm still good, hanging in there.
How about Congress DAO? We get a DAO to replace Congress, and that would actually make it more accountable to the people who elect their representatives and what they do with our money. And maybe they can write laws that don't actually destroy things like self-custody and make it impossible for people to use decentralized technology that they even don't understand themselves. So perhaps there's a way we can use this technology to help them understand these things a little bit better, and they can be a little more accountable to our people.
I think that's their real fears, that we'll all form together into a big gang and we'll start sharing our money and voting on our governor's ideas, and we won't need the existing government. We can just use government 2.0, a layer on top of existing government.
Well,
But that's not
Taproot also
Go,
makes
Jeff.
it easier. So Taproot also makes it easier to have vast multi-sigs. So, one signature, one vote, Satoshi.
There it is, one signature, one vote. But my idea for a DAO that I've talked about before is the record label DAO. The DAO produces music, it pays people to make the music, it gets the MP3s, puts them on the market based upon what sells. The DAO tries to make more music like that. The problem with this DAO, much like many of the other AI powered ideas, is that it would be completely on its own and completely out of control. So while at first I would hope it would make kind of rock alternative music that I would like, soon it could be making pop or techno or whatever the most popular music is. And with all horrible things, it could be replaced by porn and terrorism, as negative images could take over this DAO, and soon it's producing pornographic terrorist albums, whatever the most popular thing is. So record label DAO, still available. You could steal it, you could make one. And now they just made one. Moving on, check out the World Crypto Network at worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,492 videos. You could watch them for 3 months, 18 days, and 2 hours without taking a break. That would be fun. Issue 3, more banners on websites. Coinbase Institutional execs say crypto can go mainstream with spot Bitcoin ETFs now live. Yes, all of the other things that you did in the past for Bitcoin are nothing compared to Wall Street, who has now made it okay to buy Bitcoin, okay for it to be mainstream, because now you can buy it in an ETF where you can't really use any of its properties, and its revolution will be failed, much like radio and other technologies of the past. Trey Walsh, what do you think of the Coinbase executives who have finally made the world safe for Bitcoin to go mainstream?
Well, interesting question. I'm curious who the custodian is for most of these ETFs. That'd be an interesting one to like. Oh, it's Coinbase. So yeah, I mean, of course, it's really funny because like a year ago, not even, there's still some people that are like Coinbase is going to crash and burn. Coinbase just keeps getting stronger and stronger, even to my surprise. I mean, their legal might, their business acumen, in some senses, they are crushing it in terms of their business staying relevant, staying afloat. There are many people that, if you said a few years ago Coinbase was going to be custodian for these ETFs and still be around and growing in 2024, they'd be like, absolutely not. It's going to crash and burn by 2022. It's going to be like FTX. It's going to be like all these others. They're hanging in there. I mean, I have so many conflicted views on the ETFs in general. When I have conversations about the reason that I got into like Bitcoin, in this ecosystem, with people using it in peer-to-peer ways in the global south, things like that, my interest in the ETFs just tanks. Like whenever I have these conversations, I'm like, I don't care about this anymore. But then, in this kind of Western view, there's some people that are going to benefit. Some people have it in their retirement funds, things like this. So, people do what they want. I think it'll be interesting. But what's been very interesting is Grayscale selling off so much of their Bitcoin, like billions and billions, the past 2 weeks, and the price has dented a little bit, but it's like 1/800th, of the market cap or something of Bitcoin, right? So I can't emphasize enough the market is huge. Like the Bitcoin ecosystem is huge. So the ETFs for some people, I think some people felt like the ETFs are going to be the Bitcoin market and we should already be at $1 million per coin right now. Well, it kind of proved like the ETFs are still very, 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 very tiny. They will grow, I think, in terms of market value of Bitcoin and things like that. But it is and it isn't a big deal. Sometimes I'm like, it's actually not that big of a deal. Sometimes it feels like a bigger deal. So, it's conflicted, but of course Coinbase is going to say this.
It is funny, Trey, like you say, as a Bitcoiner, when I look at the ETF, one of my first questions is, how do you send and receive your ETF? Do I get a wallet? And we all know the answers to that is no, and you can't send or receive it. You can't do anything with it. Also for Coinbase, their largest enemy, I would say, Binance, CZ is gone. They've been smacked down. In a lot of ways, that's a big victory for Coinbase, who always followed the rules and tried to be the rules-based exchange. Josh Shigala, what do you think about Coinbase saying that it's okay for crypto to go mainstream now that it's an ETF?
Yeah, like Trey said, it's interesting who is behind the ETFs. What I find amazing is that the SEC gave the green light to 11 of these things after just being so hardcore with their roadblock in this space. But the thing is, with mainstream adoption, it's only a matter of time until one of these big ETFs has an incident, and at the custodian level. So I hope they don't, but I think they could and probably will. So we'll see what happens then. But I mean, of course, mainstream, like Trey said as well, you have these conversations. I'm also very conflicted by it. My ideologue cypherpunk roots are like, Bitcoin, you send it, you bank the unbanked, you unbank the banked, and you get on with it. But with this ETF, it's like, wow, the price goes up because billions of dollars can flow in. And we've talked about it many a time on the show, about it being a nice Trojan horse standing there at Wall Street walls. But it's definitely a step towards mainstream adoption for sure, because people trust it more. What do you mean that I can buy? BlackRock's now offering it. I mean, obviously that's a big trust factor, and but one thing with the Grayscale sell off, they also rebought because they had to sell because it was a legal loop that they had to do, so they had to sell it and rebuy in a certain way. I'm pretty sure. The thing that surprised me right now is the FTX liquidators are selling a shed load of Bitcoin into the market at something like 16 grand, because that was when they went down. Yet it's sitting up there by 40, and at least with Mt. Gox, they said, oh, well, we're going to give you the Bitcoin. But the FTX liquidators in the States are like, we're just going to sell it at 16, and anything that's profit above at 40 is actually our profit. And the lawyers and liquidators get to keep that stuff. It's phenomenal. Like, hang on a minute. It's such a broken system. You got all these people that have lost funds and everything, and you're going to legally now sell it off at a ridiculous price, destroy the market while doing it. I mean, it's okay because they can sell it into these massive ETFs buying it up. So yeah, it's an interesting time. But anyone thinks that these markets are going down because of the ETFs are totally wrong. We're we're heading into a halvening where there's just so many things that are heading into the right direction. So it's weird that the liquidators can't just hold on for a little bit longer or give people the Bitcoin back like Mt. Gox did.
It's
Josh,
always
didn't,
Go ahead, Dan.
only a few weeks ago read that the liabilities, customer liabilities, was like 1.4 billion from FTX, but the legal fees were like 1.5 billion.
Yeah, it's so
crazy like
shady.
that.
It's so shady.
Well, it's always interesting when you let someone else hold your Bitcoin for you, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll give you a piece of floss, 3 pretzels, and a candy bar." You're like, "Well, I had a whole Bitcoin," and they're like, "Okay, we'll throw in 10 wacky coins." Oh, 10 wacky coins. That's much more than one. But yeah, it is interesting with, like Josh was saying, with and we talked earlier about the religious ideas. Maybe the Bitcoiners are being tested with the ETF and the businesses taking over Bitcoin. And in the same way, it's a Trojan horse for them. It's also a Trojan horse for the Bitcoiners, where they have to be something that they're not, or watch their precious Bitcoin become something they don't want it to be. So it's interesting times. Ben Ark, what do you think about Coinbase saying we're finally good to go mainstream now that Wall Street will make all the money?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that ultimately it is the Trojan getting behind enemy lines, and these are the tools of liberation: Bitcoin, public key crypto, decentralized consensus mechanisms, which have in Bitcoin as well. So that being deployed, it has to happen, has to get behind enemy lines, has to penetrate the legacy financial system, and they're going to love Bitcoin. It's like in the world there isn't a lack of money. There's more money than there ever has been in the world. The average normal person, of course, we're all suffering from inflation and whatever else, but for the rich people in this world, there isn't a lack of money. There's a lack of places to put their money, and Bitcoin is this wonderful new place where they can now put their money legitimately because they have these wonderful ETFs, and all that ocean of liquidity is going to flood into our little pond, Bitcoin. And I predict that this will be the second to last great pump of the ETFs. It is going to really impact the price. The final great pump will be when the world uses Bitcoin as a world reserve currency. But this is on the road to that. And not only that, will have an insane pump, and then we'll get the Trojan behind enemy lines. It does legitimize Bitcoin in the eyes of normal people. No longer can that line be used that Bitcoin is this dark internet money used by drug dealers. If they're all using it, if they're all, participating in it. So it's and Bitcoin ultimately will become more stable and then become more usable as well. So all in all, it's a good thing. And I agree. I think the ETFs are pretty huge, because all this huge institutional investment of all these retirement funds and whatever else, which have many, many billions and trillions, can flood into Bitcoin. Yeah, and it's going to pump.
Well, I think the real key here, and it's the opposite of what we usually say, is to get Wall Street to invest more than they can afford to lose. As soon as they've crossed that point into the Bitcoin, that's where we can start to say, hey, maybe it's time to, unpack the Trojan horse and unleash the soldiers. Daniel, what do you think about Coinbase? They finally freed the world from mainstream Bitcoin.
Thank you, Brian Armstrong. I was waiting for your permission to buy Bitcoin all these years. I don't know. To me, it just feels like an insult to all the open source developers over the past decade and a half who've been contributing mostly unpaid or paid very little, and took a big risk to be here to do these things, to build Bitcoin into what it is today, going through the block size war, all the years of FUD and strife and community schisms to get to where we are now, and not to mention the hodlers who made it all the way through, and the people who use it and built technology on Lightning, on Liquid, on side chains. Like, everything that's being done right now within Bitcoin is independent of what Wall Street is doing. They don't even know about this stuff. Like, they don't know what a UTXO is. They don't know what the halving is. Like, they don't understand the supply cap. Most of these people who are investing in ETFs are just looking at price charts. And to echo something Lynn Alden said recently, they don't even know what the logarithmic chart looks like. They don't have a clue what has transpired up until now and what's coming down the road. We all see it because we've been there. We've seen how these cycles have played out, but they don't. They see something in their mind still looks like Beanie Babies. It looks like tulips. So they'll use those words all the time because to them, they don't understand the mechanisms that make Bitcoin into what it is. And it's a reliable store of value. So yeah, congratulations, Wall Street. You discovered that. You discovered a store of value. Good for you. You're so picky. I'm so proud of you. But no, I find it really insulting. And it really doesn't matter to me if people are buying the ETF or not. Sure, if you want to put it in your 401k, that's great. It's probably going to outperform everything else in there. And you probably should have that if you don't trust yourself to hold keys and you don't want to put your trust in an exchange that you've never heard of before. But the rest of us are just going to keep moving on. Bitcoin doesn't care. This stuff doesn't matter to people who've been dedicating their lives and their careers to this industry.
I think you're right, Daniel. We should be having kind of a Bitcoiners were right moment, but we're not having that. Instead, we're having a welcome Wall Street. Wall Street was right all along, which doesn't jive with the charts or the reality or anything else. And when we were talking about Bitcoin for years, they said, like you said, it's drug money, it's gangster money, it's dirty internet child porn money, whatever it is. Now that Wall Street in, it's all fine. It's interesting to see how something like the stock market and the GameStop stocks was made so easily into a movie called Dumb Money, but we still haven't seen a movie called Stupid Bitcoiners, where it's like, oh, like Daniel's saying, like hodling through all this stuff, watching it go up and down, getting called names, getting made fun of, having people lose their keys, steal keys, all kinds of things, the ups and downs of these days. And no credit, no given. The Wall Street just takes it all. Go ahead, Josh.
I have to say though, like I've run a Bitcoin exchange, a small niche one called Voltoro.com since 2014, 15, early 15. And what Brian Armstrong has achieved there is miraculous. Like it's very, it's probably the hardest. Startups are hard already. Startups are the hardest things you can do in life, apart from having children, I guess. But it's extraordinarily hard in itself, and then you add the idea that your startup is going to go up against banks and governments and regulators who don't know where it is, and the battles that just our little crappy exchange had are so immense on a constant. You've just gotten over something, and then the regulator will come in and say, now you need an anti-money laundering guy. You get that person, and then the banks shut you down, and then the next bank shuts you down, and you have to open another bank, and it's just a constant onslaught of things that you need to solve, problems, and for Brian to yes, the open source and all the developers are doing that in the background on Bitcoin. Absolutely agree. They need to be praised more than they do because they hardly get anything. The block size wars were really offensive to some of these people that got shit slung at them. Really personal attacks. Left Bitcoin. We lost some foot soldiers in that. Because so much shit was being slung that they just couldn't handle it. Some developers couldn't handle it, and so really, yes, that needs to be praised, but also on the side of the centralized on ramps and off ramps, which are an important aspect to Bitcoin, because God, remember when there was no on and off ramps? You had to jump through a million hoops going through what was it called, Dwala and I don't know, Second Life, and try to get some Second Life credits so you can send it to something else to finally get Bitcoin. Hard as hell. That's not going to change the world like that. What is going to change the world is someone can easily get paid in something and have that quite fungible between that and the money that is mainstream at the moment. And hopefully the wish is that our money becomes mainstream, Bitcoin becomes mainstream, or whatever you're into. And so
Can I quickly respond to that?
Yeah, please.
Just one point you made, which was that Brian Armstrong, if you remember, was on the other side of the block size war. He was with the big blockers. He was with the miners. He wanted to turn Bitcoin into a payment coin, and only a payment coin for big banks. He was not interested in decentralization, and he was not interested in the promise of what Bitcoin really is here to deliver, which, let's not forget, to replace central banks, not to become part of Wall Street. So I just want to remind people of that, because sometimes that gets forgotten.
Yeah, but at the same time, what is the block? What is that war? That war was, okay, Satoshi built it in a way where you can have an upgrade, and if you decide that that's not the upgrade for you, you don't upgrade, and it splits off, and you get to bet. Well, I get coins on both sides, so I don't know what the best way is. Is it small? Is it big? I don't know. As a normie user, I'll just have coins on both, and we'll see what happens. Brian Armstrong, at the same time, originally only had Bitcoin for the longest time, and didn't sell Litecoin, didn't sell any of this other stuff, stood next to Bitcoin. And Brian made his choice. I think maybe Brian got a lot of influence from Roger Ver, because he was an early investor in Coinbase. So maybe there was, I don't know what was in the background there. But just like you choosing as a user who you want to use, people can choose to use Coinbase or not. There's no force. The SEC coming in and saying, well, I can imagine giving Coinbase some sort of monopoly and saying they're the only custodian you can trust. That's dangerous. But Coinbase is also free to use and free to trust. The problem that I see as crypto, purist kind of guy, is that I can't verify anything that Coinbase does, so I don't like to use them personally. But I'm just saying that you do need to give kudos to some of these companies that have lasted such a long time, haven't. Yes, they've done terrible things like hand over stuff to tax. But what do you expect? They're a centralized authority, and that's what they're going to do. To expect anything else is ridiculous. But
it's all
it's an important part of the.
Yeah, it's all part of the growth of Bitcoin on its way to becoming the world reserve currency, and having an apolitical money as a world reserve currency. The Trojan is going to go. These big institutions, these big exchanges, these banks, central banks, they're all going to start engaging with Bitcoin. We're going to have to get used to that. We may feel some ownership over it because we were there early, just like people, early innovators in the internet, and they felt ownership over it, and they're pissed off when all these big companies and corporations came in and started using the thing which they've been building with free and open source software and collaboratively laying down the groundworks for. And I empathize with that, but we don't want Bitcoin. I personally don't want Bitcoin to remain a small underground scene or choice. I want it to be accessible by the whole world. And yes, people will engage in it in a way which is probably custodial, is probably this, is probably that. But then most Bitcoiners did before they learn that they can have this stuff in a non-custodial way, before they learn that they can keep their own keys. So it is part of the process of people learning those tools of liberation. And it's also important to remember as well that, like, with the block size wars, there were a bunch of big blockers who stayed with us in Bitcoin, and good for them. Like they put their argument forward for increasing the block size, and then that wasn't accepted, and they're like, okay, it's not accepted. I'll carry on using Bitcoin though, because its power and its value is actually in that consensus mechanism. And I personally wanted bigger blocks, but back then, but I was happy I wasn't going to fork off and fucking start using some shitcoin. So but yeah, so it was a very complicated moment in history where the users proved that they are the ones who control Bitcoin, and I'm sure that fight will have to happen again, because some of these big institutions, big investors, when they start really enforcing their power and trying to enforce their power over the Bitcoin protocol, the users will need to step up again. It's not something which is going to be the one fight we had with the block wars. But yeah, we're ready. I'm ready for them. But yeah, this is all part of the process of it becoming the apolitical world reserve currency, which is what we want. Because the world.
Well, that mining, the proof of work side of Bitcoin is a really nice separation of Wall Street and block. Because this is something that Ethereum doesn't have with the proof of stake, is that these massive ETFs can have a huge control. Although if 11 of them come out, plus that's just in the States, if you have multiple ETFs around the world, maybe that is decentralized enough. These huge silos. But yeah, I see that as a problem, definitely.
It's the possible attacks on Bitcoin as well when you have like, if all the big countries lobby together and said, okay, then we're going to allow people to use Bitcoin, but only coins in which you can account for the entire history, and we're going to attack the fungibility of Bitcoin by making mixed coins worth less effectively on the market, and that would suck.
But we all know the killer app for Bitcoin really is conferences, and they were taken over by the lawyers and the regulators.
And that's a good point,
actually.
Like those conferences, for a while, there's some conferences you go to, and when you're there, you're like, why am I working in this industry? Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I enriching all these dickheads? Like, that's been around for fucking years, man. Like, that's not a new thing we've got going on.
Well, going back to the block size war, we said that we would welcome those people back. And even though Bitcoin doesn't care what we say or do, we do welcome them back.
Yeah,
but I want to say that both Daniel and Josh are right here, that Coinbase and Brian Armstrong were on the wrong side of the block size war, but we're still fortunate to have Brian Armstrong. We could have had someone much worse in there, someone much out for their own gain, much more making their own token, betraying Coinbase, betraying people more. There could have been worse people to be the CEO of Coinbase. And if you want to know more, not that we know Brian personally, but if you watch that documentary called Coin, it's on Apple Movies and Netflix, I think, and really goes the behind the scenes, how much Brian just worked all day long. He just worked on this thing. He wakes up, he works on it, he goes to bed, he works on it, seems to have no life at all. And that's what it takes sometimes to be a successful startup founder. And I want to second what Josh said about fighting against the banks and building a startup being an incredibly hard thing. So even if we're critical of Brian Armstrong and of Coinbase, often we do respect what they've done and what they're still doing. But Dan Eve's been waiting a long time. Dan Eve, what do you think? Coinbase say it's okay for Bitcoin to go mainstream now that it's owned by Wall Street.
I mean, yeah, obviously it's not on their authority, but the pipe dream of like Bitcoin spreading around the world by from Alice and Bob visiting every single business and shilling Bitcoin and forcing them to accept BTC Pay Server and all these other things to get them on board. And that was a nice utopian dream of how Bitcoin would make it mainstream. But let's face it, it will be the big retail giants that make it really go worldwide. And that's because one of the hardest thing to do with traditional or any business in crypto is to bring the non-crypto people in and convince them that crypto is a good thing. And now that there's the heavyweights like BlackRock behind it, it does lend credence to the fact that Bitcoin isn't just this nefarious thing. So that as much as Alice and Bob doing their door-to-door business shilling, like that just made enough escape velocity for everything else, to all the other infrastructure to be put in place behind it. And let's face it as well, like as you said, like any of the centralized exchanges are going to have to bow down to regulators, right? If they want to stay, they're just either going to close their doors, like kind of like how I suppose how Bittrex did, right? They just kind of went, well, we've had enough of this. We've tried to play ball and it's not worked, so we're still getting sued. We're just going to shut shop. And they play along, or they shut the doors. So if you are a business owner and you want your business to stay along, you're going to have to do the KYC and all the things that are pretty crap. And everyone was booing when you first got into Bitcoin, and as part of the reasons why you got into it. But it's the Trojan horse, right? And it's weird that 8 of the 11. Surely that's there's got to be some form of risk there, right? Like 8 of the 11 ETFs are using Coinbase custody. That's quite a lot. That's like when I was in the Treasury Department of old company, it was like you had to register a risk if 3 out of the 8 people on the team were on the same airplane or something like that. That would be registered as a company risk. So why is eight out of 11, using the same custodian? That seems like a big risk that the regulators kind of let let it happen. Really,
Ah, don't worry about it. The SEC's got it covered, mate. Don't worry about
yeah.
There's still a chance for Brian Armstrong to have an Ocean's 11 type robbery of his own company. We have no idea. Allegedly, could be possible though.
Yeah, and it's a risk, right? Especially as inside jobs are usually the main, the main form of these sorts of big institutional hacks. So,
Well, and there's so much money, so much Bitcoin, and it all fits in one suitcase. But we're running out of time. Still a chance for people to give us a thumbs up down below. Let's go to the exit question, predicting against the magical predictor of all Bitcoin truth. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week? Trey Walsh, higher or lower?
I think higher. We've got an interesting end to the week this week. Started to creep on up a little bit more than I thought already. I don't know what happened in the past hour, but I think we're going higher, quite a bit higher.
Josh Shigala, higher or lower?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I agree that there is a bunch of stuff in the background that I'm. Yeah, I think this massive sell-off was FTX and a whole bunch of things, and then there was nothing left. There's nothing left. All the diamond hands are the only things that's left after this huge long bear. There's nothing left. So and there's a lot of buyers wanting to get in. I really see it going up from here.
I tried to sell, but there was nothing left to sell. Ben Ark, higher or lower?
Higher. We've just got that hodler bedrock of very well informed Bitcoiners. Yeah, we've had such a long bear market's higher. It's so liquid. The good thing about the massive imminent price pump from the ETF is, it'll suck because a bunch of Wall Street people will get a little bit richer, but it will free a lot of Bitcoiners to work on their Bitcoin projects full time, which has been the bootstrap effect of Bitcoin's crazy price increase over the past decade. So higher.
The Daniel, everyone's saying higher. We've got a positive bull trend here. What do you say, higher or lower?
I'm going to say lower, but I'm talking about the dollar exchange rate to Satoshis. I think we're going to see the dollar become worth less than 2,000 sats. Very soon.
Whoa, below the 2000 sat barrier again. Dan Eve, we started with you, higher or lower? Go ahead.
I think it's higher, and the specific reason why, is because a bunch of alt writers are going to read that Wired magazine. They're going to be totally inspired to go and cause some deviance in the world. So they're going to create a DAO, buy loads of Bitcoin, put the Bitcoin in the DAO, therefore making the price go up, only up. And then that's going to be the reason for all the price going up next week. So it's not. It's all for the Nazis.
I blame the DAOs. And now, the source of all truth, the Magic 8 Ball. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Reply, Hazy. Try again. Well, sometimes the ball just doesn't want to predict. Moving on to the next issue. Issue 4. 200,000 Bitcoin poised for release. Mt. Gox confirms repayment. We've also got Bitwise, who's published their ETF holdings address after on-chain sleuths discover BlackRock.
Thomas.
Screen.
Oh, is it desktop screen?
Got your private key showing, mate.
That makes it more exciting. Let's try this one. There we go. No, did it work? But we've got 200,000 Bitcoins coming out of Mt. Gox. Bitwise has published their ETF address after BlackRocks were discovered. And the U.S. plans to sell 130 million in Silk Road Bitcoins again. Let's go to Josh Shigala. What do you think? Choose a story. Grab bag.
Well, my story is definitely the Mt. Gox one. I've been waiting a very long time. The whole Mt. Gox community, I guess, of people that lost in there have been waiting for the legal front to stop chomping away at their free lunch and start to actually distribute. But why distribute when you can keep chomping? Who knows? It's sort of like how council workers or these companies that do the council work do it per hour and then never stop digging that one single hole in the middle of the road that's a really important road. Why cover that hole up when you can keep getting paid to dig? Yeah, I'll one of the things that haven't held my breath for is that the distribution won't be hacked in some sort of way, or the person that's actually sending the Bitcoin over to start distributing them to the creditors of Mt. Gox wouldn't screw it up in some way or be corrupt in some way. So we got a long way to go to seeing that. For those that think that, or will read that, wow, Mt. Gox is sending 2,000 Bitcoin or 20,000 or 200,000 Bitcoin. Actually, I think it's 145,000 Bitcoin. There has been many a survey done. Obviously surveys aren't always correct and they go out of date pretty quickly as people's financial situation changes. But most people stated that they would hodl their Bitcoin further. They won't sell on getting them. They will, however, sell their BCH. That's interesting. Not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's interesting that most people said, I'll definitely sell my BCH for coins as soon as I get them for more BTC.
Well, it's been so long with Mt. Gox, Josh. I'm not sure if the tragedy is that people lost their coins or that they jerked them around with all these emails. I keep getting email after email, half Japanese, half English. I think I have 75 cents in Mt. Gox, but they've spent way more than that to inform me about my 75 cents. And it's like Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. They keep taking it back. We keep getting all these threats. They're going to dump it on the market. They're going to ruin the market. And it keeps not materializing. So I hope they finally give the people the money. But Josh is right. It would be a killer turn for the story if the guy decides, instead of sending it to the people, just to run off with it. And then we have to chase that guy down. And then there's less money for everyone. Ben Ark, choose a story. Mt. Gox paying back. Bitwise publishes the ETF address, or 130 million US on sale again.
Josh, with the Mt. Gox, like how much of the percentage of the funds, or Thomas, how much of the percentage of the funds do you get, which you lost, if you eventually get it?
It's something like 15% or something like that.
That's low.
Yeah.
But then obviously it's gone up in price.
Well, according to the article, when they were allegedly hacked, they lost like 80% of their coins.
Yeah.
So to get 15% back out of that kind of loss with the
and then with the Bitcoin on top, does that bring the percentage up at all? Like maybe a fraction of a percent, 0.5% or something, I suppose. Extra.
Unfortunately, they didn't time it that well for the bitch release. So there's not a lot of money there anymore.
Yeah, that's true. But it is quite incredible that they have a wallet with 150,000 coins on, and they've still got it. That's an amazing thing after 10 years of it being passed around a bunch of like sketchy lawyers and people who don't probably really know what they're doing. So I have high hopes that you'll be able to get your coins back, and then the drinks are on you, Josh.
Yeah,
not Thomas.
No, my 75 cents is locked forever, I believe. But I do get the emails, and that's true for so many exchanges. Daniel, what do you think? Mt. Gox payment return, Bitcoin money on the Silk Road being sold, or Bitwise ETF address?
Oh man, I could talk about any of these, but I want to talk about the Bitwise thing for a minute because I had a good laugh when I saw they posted the address, and I'm like, wait a minute, is that like a pay to script hash address? Like it started with a 1, like an old school. Like if I were making a paper wallet in like 2014, I'd go to bitaddress.org and I would like move my mouse around, get some entropy, and it would just spit out like a address that started in a 1.
That would be a great way for them to make the paper wallets, put the ETF into, and the hackers could get into the JavaScript thing and steal all the ETF.
Like, I want to know how they made that address.
Funny.
Like, why weren't they using multi-sig? Like, they should be using a multi-sig address. They should be using a modern address format. And I couldn't understand that, and it made me a little bit wary of like all of these ETF companies. Do they really know what they're doing? Like, who did they hire to do this? And are they actually proud to publish that? Because I don't think that was a good idea.
Well, and they said one of the main reasons they published is because hackers or internet Bitcoin sleuths or whatever had already figured out a lot of the other addresses, perhaps just based on their size. these are such huge addresses, but you don't have to store all your coins in one account. And if
Exactly.
if Wall Street's thinking at that level, and whoa, we're in trouble.
Proper address hygiene. I mean, of course, we know Elizabeth Warren and everyone at FinCEN doesn't like addresses to not be reused, but that is the best way to protect your stash, to make sure that people don't see your entire amount. So it's free to make a new Bitcoin address, guys. I don't know if anyone told them that, but it doesn't cost anything extra.
There's also no way this could have leaked with Coinbase or another exchange. They're actually sending and receiving Bitcoin, actually playing ball. These just must be huge accounts that somebody noticed out there, which again doesn't make sense and doesn't fill me with lots of confidence. Unless the IT guys out there like, yes, let's keep all the money in one account. Let's keep it on my computer. I'm going to go on vacation. Dan Eve, it's grab bag. Do you want to talk about Mt. Gox, Bitwise address, or the selling of the Silk Road Bitcoins again?
Yeah, so very good point raised by Daniel about the address usage as well, and also the fact that aren't they using Coinbase? I mean, the Bitwise. This isn't Google. They're using Coinbase as the custody provider, so I don't know if that's for the ETF as well. So the fact that
remember, Coinbase is historically against new technologies. Still doesn't have the Lightning Network. Didn't have SegWit for years. Like dragged their feet because they were, they lost the block size war and they were upset about it. So yeah, it is funny, like you're saying, to see that follow through to these Wall Street guys, to the ETF. It's like they also don't like technology.
Yeah, it's a strange, especially as you'd think Coinbase would be using modernized techniques, but the other thing is that it's bringing this level of transparency to the banking world that hasn't been there before, right? Everything's so I mean, obviously we've got auditing processes, but everything is so hidden and disguised in the banking process. And now this is something that they have to literally show there's a public ledger. You've got to show your addresses. So they're seeing the kind of really the part of the side that is saying Bitcoin's completely anonymous, right? Well, no, because anyone can go and check what Bitwise's Bitcoin holdings are at any particular moment in time. So at least it's kind of getting that message out there that Bitcoin's not so anonymous and crazy, and could be so easily used for nefarious practices, because all these banks will be sat there going, oh shit, we've got to be transparent, because people can literally see the money flowing in and out. And the amount of work that would have to go into some form of damage control if one of those wallets got compromised. There's so many eyes looking at those wallets. But then the benefit of that is, as we've said, the internet sleuths who are so hot on the trails of any crypto movements. We've seen a lot with and like Ethereum hacks when that's happened, and all the wallet tracing. So maybe we'll reach the point where the banks are now going, this Bitcoin's not anonymous enough. We need to make it more anonymous.
So it is pretty embarrassing that they leak their addresses. Like you said, Dan, you can now watch those addresses, and if the coins move, everyone can get mad, and then the banks are going to have a reason for what they did. Trey Walsh, pick from the grab bag. We've got Mt. Gox, the Bitwise address, or the Silk Road coins sold again.
Yeah, I sorry to be boring on this one. I feel like Bitwise. I thought that was really interesting. I thought Daniel that you were going to say this, but the folks sending I don't know why I didn't think of this, but the 6969 and 420 sats to this address. Such a Bitcoiner, just hilarious move. Just immature children sending their sats to this address was amazing. From what I understand, the sats sent to this address are just under their assets under management. They're just like, sure, okay. Like people were like, oh my gosh, now it tips the scale. And they're like, I mean, it's our assets under management. So thanks for the free sats. Apparently that's not going to be that big of a deal. I do wonder, because from my understanding, Bitwise is one of the only ones, well, besides Fidelity, kind of arguably knows what they've been doing for quite a while with Bitcoin at least. But Bitwise has a exclusively crypto focus compared to the other funds. So I would imagine their chief technology officer knows hopefully a bit of what they're doing at Bitwise. Maybe at least there's a Shamir backup system or something on that one address. Who knows? I don't know. There could have been. I'm surprised there hasn't been already a statement out by the chief technology officer. Maybe there is, but I thought that was actually a really, really good move, a basic move. And my hope, I don't want to overstate it, but that really shifts, like Dan, you were saying, kind of shifts the window of transparency into like the financial system, even outside of Bitcoin. People are going to be like, all right, we want to see what your assets under management are. We want to see what you're saying. And that Bitcoin, these ETFs are kicking that off in a new way. So once people are seeing, oh, that's how it works, like, no, you can't fuck with that address. Like, that's the address is on the time chain. Like, this is legit. You can't fudge that. That was super interesting to me. And I'm like, it's so obvious, but at the same time, I'm like, I did not anticipate that. So I thought that was very cool.
I also think it's really smart of Bitwise to get in this on a PR aspect where the other companies have been leaked. Now they publish theirs. But I do agree, if that moves, everyone's going to say, why is Bitwise moving their money? Where are they moving it to? There's going to be a flow chart if they spread it out to multiple accounts or whatever they try to do. We're on to them now. So that is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's like, who
I'll
cares
go-
if it was a PR move? It's still good at the end of the day. And I think that's so much of Wall Street being in Bitcoin. It's like, who cares their motives? It's good for Bitcoin, right?
I also
That's
love
a
their
good point.
response to people sending them little tips or something. They're like, yeah, sure, we'll take the free money. Like, that's very classic Wall Street. People think, oh, we're embarrassing them with our, dirty numbers of 8008S and, all 5 and all this kind of thing. Oh, we'll embarrass them. But, oh, thanks for the money. Thanks for the tip. But I'll go ahead and talk about the plans for the United States to sell $130 million worth of Silk Road coins again. At first, I think, of course, that they should build a Smithsonian museum in every state with this money. But it's also getting sadder and sadder as an American to see my country squander so much Bitcoin wealth. While sure, America could have created Bitcoin at the CIA in a laboratory and might own all the Satoshi coins, if they don't, they're taking a huge risk selling all these coins time and time again as we keep seeing the price go up. And the US government does need money. Like, they collect taxes still. Like, there's not a reason to just give this back. I think they should hold it, or of course build 50 Smithsonian museums, one in every state. But moving on to the next issue, and the last issue, issue 5. Bitcoin developers have fake Satoshi on the ropes in legal fight. Craig Wright has terrorized the crypto world for nearly a decade with bogus lawsuits, but the tables may have turned. According to the article, it says that during the trial, the Bitcoin developers were also bringing their own claims, showing that Craig Wright has used forged evidence to prove that he's Satoshi and so forth. After these claims, Wright has sent them a letter claiming that he wants to settle. Josh Shigala, what do you think about fake Satoshi allegedly on the ropes in the court?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Copa should grow some teeth and not settle, because this is another one of Craig Wright's legal chess moves, which would basically allow him to say, well, we're settled, so I am Satoshi, and I'm just letting you guys use this work. And actually, it opens up to further litigation later down the road as he can choose. So I think there shouldn't be a settlement. It should just go through, prove you Satoshi, mate, sign the block, do whatever you need, if you are, and I doubt you can. So, pay up and stop this affinity scam, which it, to my mind, is. And it's just been so long, and I just can't believe some of the courts haven't looked at some of these forged documents and gone, this is perjury. Like, you just can't bring this sort of nonsense, provable forgery into a court case and expect no sort of blowback. But it seems to me like that it's just sort of like, oh yeah, well, we'll reject that as evidence, and that's the end of it. Hang on a minute, what? No, like, can we bring that to court that he brought this? Anyway, it's strange to me that people follow this guy. Like I said, I'm agnostic. Like, if you want to try a blockchain with gigablocks or whatever, try it out. I mean, try it out. It's a free world, but don't go around fooling people into that you're, Jesus's second coming, or that you're Satoshi, and try to then sue people that are making an honest living in Bitcoin, or spread ridiculous conspiracies when really we're all just trying to build a cool product. If you think you can build a better product, then build it. Get on with it. Don't lie and try to deceive people that you're the original Bitcoin, so buy this one and not that one or whatever. Just say, look, this one's better. If it is, then people will use it. Let the free market prevail.
You're right, Josh. It is a different fake Satoshi situation these days with the launch of Bcash and then the launch of BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi's Vision. Now we can say that this guy came into the community, launched a product, launched a second product, competing against the original Bitcoin product. So it is a little different than the original point when he came back and declared himself Satoshi. But I'm heartened by the headline. It's kind of like that point in Harry Potter where they stop saying "he who can't be named" and they start saying Voldemort. And to see Fortune Crypto say "fake Satoshi" in the headline, we're really making progress. Where in the past they would have been afraid or said, he claims to be Satoshi. Ben Ark, what do you think about the possible turn in the courts for fake Satoshi?
Yeah, this is from him trying to sue free and open source developers for working on Bitcoin. And you have this, what's a Crypto Alliance thing, whatever it's called, the Crypto Patent Alliance thing, where they, I think they got backed by Jack Dorsey. So they've got some funds now to work with. And they were on Twitter just saying, no, it's a hard pass. Like, sorry, Craig Wright was trying to sue them for working as free and open source developers on Bitcoin. And then they sort of managed to get this UK judge to allow them to have like a counterclaim against these forged documents, which is a crime, a real crime. And you could face jail time. And then if some of his lawyers are involved, if they're if they're aware of that, they can also get disbarred and whatever else. So it's a bad
and
rap
he's
for them.
fired 3 of his lawyers now.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
law firms. It just keeps getting new law
in the
firms.
UK, a bunch of his lawyers are in Cardiff. I know them, and they're making a ruck of money defending this guy, or working for this guy, but they don't want to. They don't want to get in shit about it. So they're trying to do this out of court settlement, which I'm sure is being pushed by the lawyers as well. But yeah, the developers now are thankfully in a position where they're able to say, no, a hard pass, fuck you. And I think this hopefully could be a nail in a coffin, a kick in the balls, and we won't see any more of Craig Wright, and that they won't settle out of court. That they will take it all the way and just finally snuff this motherfucker. But it's a typical case of just watching a bad actor very slowly, like a train wreck in slow motion, just unravel themselves. And you just got to sit back and wait, and it's just really inconvenient for everybody. I'm really glad as well. I didn't realize that it said in this article that Peter McCormack was able to not have to pay Craig Wright's court fees, which from their court case, that was thrown out as well. So yeah, he's just unraveling himself, man, and he's as they do, he'll end up in jail at some point eventually, and then you can tell everyone in jail about his gigamegs.
Well, much like the Trump situation, it's important to know if the lawyers are in on it or whether the client lied to the lawyers. So whether Craig Wright had these forged documents and the lawyers knew about it, or if the lawyers didn't know that they were presenting forgeries.
When I spoke to them, they made very clear that they didn't think he was Satoshi. So
that's just like, if you don't believe your client's guilty, you can still represent them and you can still provide an effective defense and so forth. Doesn't have to be believed. Daniel, what do you think? We've got fake Satoshi on the ropes, according to the article headline.
Hey, so I kind of feel like this story, it's what's interesting to me about it is it ties back to so many of the other stories we talked about on this show. So you've got like the church pastor, the religious extremism, angle, like selling a fake coin and getting your followers to rapidly go, get behind you to fervently believe it and continue to pump it. Like there's that angle. There's the angle of like with the ETFs and Wall Street, completely insulting open source developers and all the work they've done. There's also the angle of with Cox, where notice how they're not letting people cash out in BSV because no one wants it because it's not worth anything. So I just feel like I'm so happy to see this story get put to bed and get put to bed before the halving, before the next cycle ends, and we won't have to talk about CSW and any of this nonsense in the next cycle. It'll all be gone. Ancient history, we can laugh about it in a few years. But man, this was a hard one to get through just because it took so long. I feel like this court case has been going on for like, 6 years. It just be like, I'm tired of it. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Man, I got personal good friends that are deep in that space. They absolutely believe it. I've had countless hours of arguments, and it's almost impossible. It's a literal cult.
I have lost friends over this. Like, I have people who were, my early Bitcoin friends who have gone that path, either down the Bcash route or down BSV, and yeah, we can't talk anymore. There's just nothing to say because they refuse to. They're like the soldiers in the jungle after the war ends, and they don't want to admit that it's over, and they're still there pretending the war's happening and they're ready to fight, but the war's over. You've lost.
It also feels like a metaphor for the politics of our time, but I don't want to get into that. Dan, Eve, what do you think? Fake Satoshi on the ropes in court?
Oh, and it feels like only yesterday, like we were saying at the end of like 2018. Oh, I hope this just like these court cases just end. This is getting ridiculous now, and it's just really dragging out. It's just such it's just it's as gone a story as like Bitcoin is bad for the environment or is used for money laundering. It's concluded by anyone that really knows it. And we mentioned Nchain. I went to Nchain in 2018 and like met some of the people there, couple of doctors and all that. They didn't think that he was Satoshi, and that was very clear at the time. And a lot of people have come out of there since. There was the guy, wasn't there one of the senior execs in Nchain that's now completely gone, turned against the tide and is saying how everyone thinks it's BS in there and how crazy.
Well, I think he's actually dedicated to disproving it. Like, not so much he doesn't just believe, he's out there actively disproving.
Yeah, so I mean, we need more of those people coming out of the woodwork and saying how they were hoodwinked in some form of way. A lot of them are embarrassed, right? It's hard to turn around and say that admit that you were defrauded by Craig Wright's words. And I've met him. I've sat and had dinner with him. He's got kind of he sounds like to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. He uses lots of good word salad. He's an intelligent guy. I mean, like, he's probably far more intelligent than me, but like, you kind of know that he's BSing, if you know what I mean. And then other people, you see him chat to him and you're like, they're lapping it up and you're like, you're a like logical, critical thinking person. How are you lapping this up right now? And it's just so weird, but he's got charisma and stuff, and that's how he's been bankrolled, right? There's people that have dipped into their pockets so hard that they have to win, otherwise they're corrupt inside. They've lost everything by backing this guy. He needs to win. So let's just hope it's one of the last of the cases before he just doesn't get listened to anymore.
And finally, Trey Walsh, we come to you last, expecting a different opinion. We want you to come out here full support for Satoshi and tell us we're all wrong, of course.
Craig Wright is clearly Satoshi. Like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I mean, I'm the newbie here. Like, I got into Bitcoin in like 2021, no technical background, all of this. What's been interesting for me is I feel like I've learned more about courts in various countries. And some of our rights and protections a little more in the legal system in the US versus Europe, England. It's been really interesting and unfortunate to watch someone like this just take advantage of that and look for any way to terrorize someone and destroy someone. So yeah, it's coming back around to him. It seems like, throw the full books at him. I don't think there's any mercy at this point. This is absolutely insane, going after such a pure thing in open source software development. No, like this is ridiculous. So like Daniel said, I hope we can stop talking about this among many other things and just move forward into a brighter future with less frauds and terrible people like this.
Yes, it has been interesting and horrifying to learn about these other country legal systems. For example, the United Kingdom having a weaker standard for liable, and thus why he sued there, and then why he was able to sue developers, and even Peter McCormick, a podcaster, who just made a tweet, where in the United States that would get tossed out. In other countries, they still take that seriously. But we're running out of time, so we're going to skip ahead to prediction or story of the week. Daniel, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Yes, I am ready. February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day in New York City, I predict a earth-shattering event that will leave a mark on Bitcoin history. And if you want to see more about that, Trey, you should come to PubKey. You should get on the
I know. I'm
the
trying to figure
road.
it out, man.
You're only 200 miles away, man. You got to come down here. No, we're planning an event with HRF, Human Rights Foundation, to talk about CBDCs and the destructive potential that they have. And there will be some very interesting people there that evening, and we hope to leave some memories behind. Something that will definitely make Bitcoin history that night.
That sounds great. And PubKey is in New York City, right? So in case anyone's in the area, they can attend. Yeah.
Yep, it's open to the public. All of our events are free to the public unless otherwise noted. The HRF ones, this is our second in the series. We plan to continue to do those throughout the year. They're great events. You can learn a lot. And it's just down in West Village, just off West 4th Street. So pop in. It's open to the public.
That sounds great. Very cool. Dan, Eve, prediction or story of the week. Go ahead.
Prediction or a story of the week. What have the articles been on? I predict that. There you go. Here's a nice, easy one. I predict that the alt-right, that big basket of meanies that are pervasive on the internet everywhere and hiding in the little crevices of society, will create a DAO on something or other and use it for nefarious purposes, and probably involving some symbol that's later to be deemed a hate symbol by the ADO.
And we can only hope that it all comes back to the Wired magazine article, because that would make a really cool movie, and the guy who wrote the article could sell it and get sweet money from the movie. Excellent. Trey Walsh, prediction or a story of the week. Go ahead.
I'm going to say a prediction. I think this is I'll do a prediction for the year. I think this is also going to be the year of like eCash. And we talk about Lightning, we talk about spending. I'm really bullish on eCash, Cashew implementation. I think folks have got some really, really cool ideas with this, kind of Fediment along with that. In terms of fee market, the ordinals have kind of put this into the spotlight, regardless of anyone's views on it, in terms of dealing with these high fee markets, dealing with what Bitcoin looks like in a peer-to-peer way, which is one of the most interesting things for me on Bitcoin. So I'm really looking forward to a bright future with eCash and Fediment and Cashew. Again, it is custodial in a lot of ways. I'll make that clear with people. But I think there's some really cool payment systems coming for Bitcoin that's really going to launch it forward. That's really going to help a lot of people. So I'm very bullish on that.
Excellent. Everyone can check out Trey's podcast, the Progressive Bitcoiner Podcast. Do you have a web page or a link you want to share with people, Trey? Go ahead.
Yeah, so you can go to progressivebitcoiner.com. That's our domain. We've got a Substack, progressivebitcoiner.substack.com. And then on all socials and podcasts, just type in the Progressive Bitcoiner and it'll pop up.
Very cool. Thanks, Trey, for being on the show, and keep an eye out. I just might be on there pretty soon. Josh Agala, prediction or story of the week. Go ahead. But you're still muted, so we can't hear you.
Postman Pat.
Postman Pat will become a hate symbol. That's what I predict.
It's phallic nose.
Yes, phallic nose. Sickos. Just my prediction is that that people will continue reading FUD about all sorts of stuff, and just to ignore it and keep dollar cost averaging no matter what. And have fun. Enjoy the week.
And finally, Ben Ark, a prediction or a story of the week. Go ahead.
A lot, really. Just been grinding on the LM bits. We've got 0.12 coming out soon, and that'll come with so we have a really cool login system now, which we have, and also a user system, so you can like manage your users, and that's what we've been working on. Predictions is just more. We're just edging, moving slowly closer to just World War III, and it's going to suck. Recently, it was yesterday in the UK, we've got some generals talking about conscription, and how us in the UK need to be ready for conscription if NATO goes to war with the Russians. You have economic crisis, then you have populist leaders, then you have wars. That's generally what happens. And 2024, it'll be the year of kind of stuff converging, technologies and stuff would be exciting, but I do think we're highly likely to end up in another world war. So get ready, be prepared. Sorry, to be the bearer of bad news.
I didn't think I'd get to follow Ben's doom prediction, but I have a nice, fun, and light prediction, or story of the week. I've been trying to watch all the Bitcoin and related movies. I watched Bitconned. I watched The Highest of Stakes, the Richard Hart Hex movie. And this week I watched This Is Not Financial Advice, the Dogecoin Millionaire movie. And it was pretty interesting. I got it on Apple TV for like $9 or something, but it's available out there. And it basically tells the story of Pro the Doge, a guy who invests his entire life savings and everything he's got into Dogecoin, makes it up to $1 million, about 3 million, then refuses to sell. So it's a pretty amazing movie. It was interesting to watch after watching the Richard Hart Hex documentary and Bitcoin and so forth, and to see the thought process was almost the same exact scene where the guy's talking to his wife and she's like, I don't know anything about the money. And the husband's like, I just put all of our house money into Dogecoin. Stuff like that happens. So it's an interesting movie. Definitely check it out. I'm going to look for it in the future. There's one on Amazon Video that's about Dr. Ruja, the crypto queen from OneCoin. I want to check that out. And I'm just totally interested in this new genre we have of Bitcoin and I suppose shitcoin documentaries. So interesting.
I'm liking all the shitcoin documentaries on Netflix and things. I'm enjoying them. They're good.
Well, I mean, a lot of them. This one, I mean, the point of this one at the end, though, they were pretty it's interesting because the guys won and lost the money, and at the end they're kind of saying, oh, you're going to win and lose money, and it just comes back to this money thing. But unfortunately, or whether you like it or not, the Dogecoin guy tweeted a couple of days ago he's back up to $1 million. He never sold. So it's pretty interesting. Okay. But that's about it for this show. Thanks to Daniel and Trey for being our guests today. Thanks to everybody else. Thanks for giving us a thumbs up down below and pushing subscribe. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.